The rain didn't stop the crowd from filling the church. Umbrellas opened like dark wings as mourners gathered to say goodbye to Harold Lancaster, a man everyone respected, but few truly knew. Inside, the air was heavy with whispers and perfume. Ethan stood at the back, his suit a little too worn for the room, his tie crooked, his heart restless. His family hadn't looked at him once since the ceremony began. They stood in the front pew, polished and proud, pretending their grief was deeper than their greed. Ethan had always been the outcast, the one who didn't join the family business, the one who chose his own path. His grandfather was the only person who ever supported him. Harold saw something in Ethan that the rest didn't. Honesty, courage, a refusal to bend. When the old man fell ill, Ethan visited him every week. He sat by the bedside, listened to stories, and promised he'd make him proud one day. But when Harold passed, the calls stopped, the doors closed, and his family treated him like he was already gone. The funeral ended in silence. Outside, the lawyer, Mr. Wilkins, gathered the family under a canopy to read the will. Ethan hesitated before joining them, feeling every stare like a knife. The lawyer opened a black folder, cleared his throat, and began. "To my children and grandchildren," he said, "I leave my gratitude for the life we've shared, and the future you will continue to build." His voice trembled slightly, but the words that followed silenced the crowd. "To my grandchildren, I leave my estate, my company shares, and the total of $48 million to be divided equally." The family exchanged eager looks, already calculating their share. Ethan waited, knowing his name would come last, but when it did, everything froze. "Except for Ethan Lancaster," the lawyer continued, glancing up briefly, as if unsure how to say it. "To him, I leave one plane ticket to Monaco." The sound of the rain faded. Ethan's mind went blank. Around him, gasps and muffled laughter filled the air. His cousin whispered, "Figures." His aunt smirked. His father said nothing, just adjusted his cufflinks and looked away. Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to ask why, but no words came. The lawyer closed the folder quietly, avoiding Ethan's eyes. The family began to disperse, murmuring about investments, new houses, and shares. Ethan stood alone under the canopy, the paper envelope in his hand slowly getting wet from the rain. The ticket inside felt like an insult, a cruel reminder that he didn't belong. "Monaco?" he muttered bitterly. "He left the millions and sent me on vacation?" No one came to comfort him. No one even looked back. His mother brushed past, pretending not to notice his trembling hands. He caught her sleeve. "Did you know about this?" he asked, voice shaking. She hesitated, eyes darting toward his father, then whispered, "Just go home, Ethan," before walking away. He stayed there long after everyone left. The cemetery grew quiet, the rain lightened, and all that remained was the echo of betrayal. He unfolded the ticket again. It was for a one-way flight, scheduled 2 days later. He turned it over, and that's when he noticed something strange. Written faintly on the back in his grandfather's handwriting were 5 words. "Follow the truth." "Start in Monaco." His heart skipped. For a moment, the anger inside him paused. His grandfather's writing. There was no mistaking it. He traced the letters with his thumb, trying to understand what it meant. Was this a message? A clue? The wind picked up, scattering rose petals from the graves. He pocketed the ticket, his mind racing. If this was a message, why hide it? Why send him away instead of giving him answers? That night, the Lancaster mansion glowed with celebration. Ethan watched through the rain-streaked window as his family toasted to their inheritance. Laughter echoed across the courtyard. His uncle raised a glass. "To Harold, who left us everything!" Ethan clenched his fists. Everything except him. He turned away from the window and walked to the old garden where his grandfather used to sit. The bench was still there, wet from rain. He sat down, closing his eyes, remembering their last conversation. "Ethan," his grandfather had said weeks before his death, his voice weak but sharp. "Our family is a house built on sand. Someday, someone has to face the tide." At the time, Ethan didn't understand. Now he did. Maybe this was what Harold meant. that he needed to go to Monaco to find the truth that his family had buried. But why him? Why not his father, the heir to everything? Why trust the one they all called a disappointment? He looked back at the house one last time. Inside, his cousins were laughing, holding wine glasses filled with his grandfather's finest vintage. They didn't look like mourners. They looked like conquerors. That image burned into his memory. He made a promise right there, not out loud, but deep inside where no one could hear. I'll find out why you did this, grandfather. I'll find the truth you wanted me to see. And if they've betrayed you, I'll make them pay. 2 days later, Ethan arrived at the airport with nothing but a suitcase and the ticket. His family didn't see him off. They probably assumed he was gone for good. He didn't mind. The moment the plane lifted off the runway, he looked out at the clouds and whispered, "This isn't over." During the flight, he couldn't stop thinking. What if Monaco wasn't a punishment? What if it was a test? His grandfather had been a careful man, not the kind to make meaningless gestures. There had to be a reason behind it all. He imagined Harold writing those words, knowing Ethan would be the only one who cared enough to read them. When the plane descended over the sparkling blue sea of Monaco, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years: determination. He stepped out into the sunlit airport, clutching the envelope that started it all. The air smelled of salt and promise. He had no idea where to go or who to trust, but his instincts told him this place held the answers. He took a taxi through winding streets lined with luxury cars and white villas. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, noticed the tension in his face. "First time here?" he asked. Ethan nodded. "You here for business or pleasure?" "Neither," Ethan replied. "I'm here for the truth." The driver smiled faintly, as if he'd heard that before. "Monaco hides many truths," he said, "but it only gives them to those who really look." That night, Ethan checked into a small inn overlooking the harbor. The lights of the city shimmered on the water, and somewhere beyond them, he felt the weight of his family's betrayal pushing him forward. He opened the envelope again, reading the words over and over. "Follow the truth. Start in Monaco." He placed the ticket on the table, beside an old photograph he'd brought with him. One of him and his grandfather fishing by the lake, both smiling, both free. That memory became his anchor. He would find whatever his grandfather wanted him to see. He lay awake, listening to the hum of the city outside. The laughter of strangers echoed faintly through the open window, blending with the sound of waves. He felt alone, but for the first time in years, that loneliness didn't feel like weakness. It felt like strength. Back in his hometown, his family probably believed he'd disappeared quietly. They were wrong. The will might have left him nothing, but it had given him something far more dangerous: purpose. As dawn broke, he stood by the window, watching the sky turn gold. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. "When you find the truth, you'll know why you had to lose everything first." Ethan took a deep breath, his reflection sharp in the glass. The pain of betrayal hadn't faded, but it had changed. It had become fuel. Whatever waited for him in Monaco, secrets, lies, or something worse, he was ready to face it. And if his family had built their empire on deceit, he would uncover every brick of it, one truth at a time. He wasn't just Harold Lancaster's forgotten grandson anymore. He was his legacy, and his revenge had just begun. Ethan woke to the soft sound of waves breaking against the shore. The air in Monaco felt different, lighter, cleaner, but heavy with mystery. He stood on the balcony of the small inn overlooking the blue sea, gripping the ticket his grandfather had left him. The words still echoed in his mind. Follow the truth. Start in Monaco. He didn't know what to look for or where to begin, but something deep inside told him his grandfather had trusted only him with this secret. After a quick breakfast, he wandered through the narrow streets, where sunlight bounced off white walls and the scent of coffee filled the air. Everything looked perfect, but Ethan had learned that perfection often hid the ugliest truths. He walked for hours, thinking, until he reached an old stone path leading up to a quiet hill. There, overlooking the sea, stood a modest villa with a red roof and ivy climbing the walls. He checked the back of the ticket again. A small handwritten address was there. It matched. His heartbeat quickened. He climbed the steps, rang the bell, and waited. A few moments later, an elderly woman opened the door. Her silver hair was tied neatly, her eyes sharp but kind. "Can I help you?" she asked in a soft French accent. Ethan hesitated. "My name is Ethan Lancaster. I think my grandfather, Harold Lancaster, might have left something here." Her eyes widened slightly, then softened. "Ah, so you are him. Come in." The villa was filled with old furniture, books, and the smell of lavender. The woman led him to a small study, where a sealed wooden box rested on a desk. "He said one day a young man would come asking," she said quietly. "He told me to give him this." Ethan's hands trembled as he opened the box. Inside were documents, letters, photographs, all neatly arranged. At the bottom lay a note written in Harold's familiar handwriting. "Ethan, if you're reading this, then you are the only one I could trust. What you find here will change everything. Use it wisely." Ethan unfolded the papers. The first few pages were company records from Lancaster Holdings, the family's business empire. But the deeper he looked, the more disturbing it became. There were contracts showing hidden offshore accounts, names of fake companies, and payments to government officials. Some documents were even signed by his father and uncles. His stomach twisted. His family's wealth wasn't built on brilliance or hard work. It was built on corruption. His grandfather must have discovered it before he died. Ethan sat there stunned as the pieces fell together. His family had likely changed the will to protect themselves, ensuring he was sent away before he could find this evidence. But Harold had been smarter. He had hidden the truth in plain sight. Ethan spent hours reading through the files. There were letters between Harold and a man named Victor Moreau, his former business partner. From the letters, it was clear Victor had tried to expose the Lancaster fraud years ago, but was silenced, accused of embezzlement, ruined by false charges. Ethan's grandfather had regretted not stopping it sooner. In one of the envelopes, Ethan found a photograph of Victor with a note scribbled on the back. "If you want the whole truth, find him. He lives not far from here." He thanked the woman, tucked the documents into his bag, and left the villa. His pulse raced with a mix of fear and purpose. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about justice. If he could prove his family's crimes, everything would change. Ethan tracked down Victor Moreau's address, an apartment near the old harbor. The building was worn, the paint peeling, but when Victor opened the door, Ethan saw intelligence in his eyes despite the years of defeat. "I was expecting you," Victor said calmly, as if he had been waiting. Ethan blinked. "You knew my grandfather sent me?" Victor nodded. "Harold told me, if anything happened to him, someone honest would come looking." He motioned Ethan inside. The apartment was small, cluttered with files and old photographs. On the wall hung a faded newspaper article showing Victor's face under the headline, "Businessman accused of fraud." "I didn't steal a thing," Victor said bitterly. "Your family destroyed my name when I refused to hide their crimes. Harold tried to make it right, but by then it was too late." Ethan sat across from him, his fists clenched. "I saw the papers. Offshore accounts, false contracts, bribes, all of it. They ruined you to protect themselves." Victor studied Ethan's face. "So what will you do with this truth?" Ethan didn't answer. The question hung heavy in the room. He didn't know yet. Part of him wanted to hand the files to the authorities and watch his family fall. Another part wanted to confront them face to face and make them feel the betrayal he'd carried for years. Victor stood, pouring 2 cups of coffee. "Harold believed you were different," he said. "He said you had his heart, not their hunger. That's why he sent you, not to destroy them, but to end what he started." Ethan drank quietly, his thoughts spinning. He felt anger, sorrow, and a growing determination. He spent the next few days in Victor's apartment, scanning through every document, organizing them into folders. Together, they pieced together a timeline of fraud that stretched back decades. Each page told a story of deception. Investors cheated, employees silenced, lives ruined. But the more Ethan learned, the heavier his chest grew. These weren't just business crimes. They were personal. His own father had betrayed people who trusted him. Harold had tried to stop it, but must have realized the truth too late. That's why he sent Ethan to Monaco, to finish what he couldn't. At night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring at the lights of the harbor, thinking of his family back home. He imagined their smug faces celebrating the inheritance while their empire stood on lies. He wanted to expose them, to show the world what they truly were, but something inside him whispered, would revenge fix anything, or would it just make him like them? On the third day, Victor handed him a small flash drive. "This holds everything," he said. "All the evidence your grandfather and I collected. Enough to bring them down." Ethan took it, feeling its weight like a weapon. "Thank you," he said quietly. Victor smiled faintly. "Don't thank me yet. Justice has a price. Make sure you can live with it." Ethan left the apartment as the sun set. The streets glowed with orange light, but his heart was shadowed with conflict. He walked for hours, replaying his grandfather's voice in his mind. "When you find the truth, you'll know why you had to lose everything first." He finally understood. His grandfather hadn't disinherited him. He had freed him. While the rest of the family drowned in greed, Ethan was given the chance to start clean. But freedom came with a choice: destroy his family's legacy or redeem it. That night, he returned to the villa to think. The caretaker greeted him with a warm smile and handed him a letter that had just arrived. It had no return address, only his name written neatly on the envelope. Inside was a single line: "If you want justice, come home." Ethan froze. Someone knew what he was doing. Was it a warning or an invitation? Either way, he couldn't ignore it. The time for questions was over. He gathered the documents, the flash drive, and his grandfather's note. He packed everything into his bag and looked out at the sea one last time. The horizon glowed faintly, as if the world itself waited for his next move. He whispered to himself, "They think I'm gone. They think they won, but they're wrong." As the first light of dawn touched the sky, Ethan booked a flight back home. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. He wasn't returning as the forgotten heir who had been left with nothing. He was returning as the one holding every secret, every lie, every hidden truth his family had buried. For years, they had built their fortune by crushing others. Now their own blood was coming for them, not with anger, but with truth. And that, Ethan thought, was the sharpest weapon of all. He glanced at the ticket that had started everything, still tucked in his wallet. The words on the back had faded slightly, but he didn't need to read them anymore. He knew what his grandfather had meant. The truth wasn't a destination, it was a path. One that he was finally ready to walk. As the plane took off, Ethan closed his eyes. The search was over. The reckoning had begun. Ethan's flight landed just before dawn. The city that once felt like home now looked foreign, colder, emptier. As he stepped out of the terminal, the wind carried a familiar bitterness, the same feeling he'd had the day his family stole everything from him. But this time he wasn't empty-handed. In his bag were the files, letters, and recordings. The truth his grandfather had hidden. The truth his family had tried to bury. He hailed a cab and gave the driver one address, the Lancaster estate. It had been months since he'd last seen it, but he could still picture every corner of that mansion. The tall iron gates, the flawless gardens, the windows glowing like eyes watching everything. As the car approached, the memories returned. The laughter behind closed doors, the cold glances, the moment the will was read and his world fell apart. When he stepped out, the gates opened automatically. The guard recognized him but said nothing. Maybe they thought he was here to beg. Ethan smirked. Not this time. Inside, the mansion looked exactly the same. Grand chandeliers, portraits of ancestors staring down from gold frames, and the faint scent of money and deceit. His family was already gathered in the main hall. His father stood at the center, tall and composed, wearing the same expression that once made Ethan feel small. His uncles, aunts, and cousins surrounded him, dressed in luxury, holding glasses of champagne. They were celebrating another business deal, the same empire that was built on lies. The moment they saw Ethan, the room went silent. His father lowered his glass slowly. "Well, look who decided to come back," he said. Did Monaco treat you well? Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady. Grandfather sent me there for a reason. And I found it, his cousin laughed. You found sunshine in casinos? Ethan dropped his bag on the marble floor. The sound echoed. He unzipped it and pulled out a thick stack of papers. No, he said quietly. I found the truth. He spread the documents across the table. Bank records, contracts, letters signed by each of them. The room froze. His father's smile vanished. What is this? The proof, Ethan said. Every deal you faked, every account you hid, every person you destroyed for money. He pointed at one letter. Grandfather knew everything. He left me the ticket so I'd find this, the evidence you tried to erase. His uncle stepped forward, his voice sharp. You don't know what you're talking about. These are old papers. Ethan's eyes burned with anger. Old lies, maybe, but still lies. You framed Victor Moreau. You stole from your own company. You ruined people's lives, and you thought no one would ever find out. The tension grew thick. No one spoke. His mother looked pale, her hand trembling around her glass. Ethan, please, she whispered. You don't understand. No, Mom, he cut in. I understand perfectly. You all betrayed Grandfather. You betrayed everything he built, and when he found out, you made sure I was gone before I could uncover the truth. His father's expression hardened. He was old and confused. Whatever you found means nothing now. Ethan stared at him, the man who'd taught him to be honest, but lived a lie his whole life. You always said I was weak because I didn't chase money, but you're the one who lost everything that matters. He took out a flash drive and held it up. This has everything. I could hand it to the authorities right now, or the media. In a week, the Lancaster name would mean nothing. Everyone's eyes locked on the flash drive. For a moment, no one breathed. Then his father spoke slowly. You'd destroy your own family? Ethan looked around the room. The people who had left him in the rain, laughing while he had nothing. You stopped being my family the day you turned greed into a legacy. Silence fell. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He'd dreamed of this moment, the revenge, the power to bring them down. And yet, standing there, looking at their frightened faces, he felt something unexpected, pity. He remembered his grandfather's words. The truth will set you free, but revenge will chain you forever. He turned the flash drive in his hand, hesitating. All he had to do was make one call, and justice would be served. But deep down, he knew destroying them wouldn't heal anything. It would only keep the hate alive. His father stepped closer, his tone low and cold. You won't do it. You're not ruthless enough. Ethan met his gaze. You're right. I'm not like you. He put the flash drive back in his pocket. I don't need revenge. I already have what you never will. Peace. He gathered the papers back into the bag, ignoring their shocked faces. His uncle shouted, You think walking away makes you better? You'll regret this. Ethan turned at the door. No, he said softly. You will. He left the mansion without another word. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of gold. For the first time in years, he felt light. The anger that once consumed him was fading, replaced by something purer. Resolve. He didn't go to the press. Instead, he mailed the evidence anonymously to the financial authorities. He didn't need fame or credit. He just wanted the truth to do its job. Over the following weeks, the investigation began quietly. Reporters surrounded the Lancaster offices. Accounts were frozen. Contracts were canceled. His family's empire began to crumble piece by piece, not because of his vengeance, but because of their own greed. Ethan watched it all from a distance. He rented a small apartment near the coast, working on rebuilding his life from scratch. Every headline that mentioned the Lancaster scandal reminded him of how close he'd come to letting hate define him. One evening, while walking along the beach, he found a letter slipped under his door. It was from his mother. Her handwriting was shaky. Ethan, the family is falling apart. Your father blames you. I don't. I know Harold would be proud. You did what none of us had the courage to do. You chose what's right. I'm sorry I didn't protect you when I should have. Maybe one day we can start again. Ethan folded the letter carefully and placed it in his pocket. He didn't hate her. She was trapped, just like the rest of them. Maybe now she could finally be free too. Months later, he returned to Monaco. The same villa stood waiting, quiet and calm. The caretaker greeted him warmly. You found what you were looking for? She asked. Yes, Ethan said. And I found something I didn't expect. Peace. He walked to the balcony overlooking the sea, breathing in the same salt air that had greeted him when his journey began. He thought of his grandfather, the man who had seen through the lies, who had trusted him when no one else did. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me more than money ever could. He built a small consulting firm in Monaco, one that helped honest entrepreneurs start clean businesses. It wasn't grand, but it was real, built on truth, not deceit. Each day he worked, he remembered what his grandfather had taught him. Success meant nothing without integrity. A year later, he saw the final news headline: Lancaster Holdings officially dissolved. His father had resigned in disgrace, his uncles faced charges, and the family name had lost its shine. The empire that once looked untouchable had crumbled, because one man chose to seek the truth instead of revenge. Ethan closed the newspaper and smiled faintly. He felt no pride, no triumph, only calm. His journey had begun with betrayal and ended with freedom. He had learned that revenge could destroy others, but forgiveness could save yourself. That evening, as the sun sank below the horizon, Ethan sat by the shore. The waves moved gently, steady and endless, washing away footprints on the sand. For the first time, he felt that his life wasn't defined by what he'd lost, but by what he'd found: courage, clarity, and peace. He pulled out the faded plane ticket from his wallet, the one that had started everything. The ink was almost gone, but the words still whispered to him, "Follow the truth." Start in Monaco, he smiled. His grandfather hadn't left him with nothing. He had left him with the greatest inheritance of all: wisdom.